Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode brought to you by UCLA InterAxon's Neuroscience for Kids. Today we'll be talking about neurons or nerve cells. Do you know what a neuron is? A neuron is the most basic cell or building block of the central nervous system. The central nervous system is made up of your brain and spinal cord. Neurons carry electrochemical signals throughout your body and help your brain send the right orders to your limbs and organs. The human brain has about 86 billion neurons. That's about 12 times the world population. While that's definitely a lot, there's another cell type in the nervous system that outnumbers the tiny neuron. These are glial cells, and they nourish and support our neurons. In humans, there are at least 10 times more glial cells than neurons. Some animals have simpler nervous systems, like C. elegans. This little worm only has 302 neurons. Scientists love this worm because it's much easier to study their cells and behavior. Now let's look at the anatomy of the neuron. The neuron is made up of 6 main parts: the dendrites, soma, axon hillock, axon, myelin sheath, and nodes of Ranvier. The soma is also called the cell body and kind of looks like a fried egg. Cell bodies form gray matter which make up the outer layer of the brain. Dendrites receive signals from neighboring neurons and send them down to the axon hillock. The hillock checks to see if the signal is strong enough to send down the axon. If it is strong enough, it will travel down the axon as an electrical signal called an action potential. An action potential is all or nothing, which just means that the signal has to be strong enough or nothing goes down the axon. Axons make up white matter, which is deeper in the brain, because they are wrapped by pinkish-white fatty tissue called the myelin sheath. This tissue insulates the neuron or prevents the signal from leaking out. Sometimes the myelin sheath has gaps called nodes of Ranvier, which let the signal jump really fast from node to node down the axon.
Once the action potential reaches the axon terminals, or ends of the axon, the signal becomes chemical. Axon terminals are home to neurotransmitters, or chemical messengers, in tiny sacs called vesicles. Neurotransmitters are sent across the small gap between neurons, called the synaptic cleft, and bind to dendrites on the receiving neuron. You can think of neurotransmitters like letters being sent between friends. Ned the neuron wants to tell Nellie the neuron something, so he sends her an envelope full of neurotransmitters. There are 2 main types of neurotransmitters: excitatory and inhibitory. Excitatory messages tell the cell to fire or send an action potential, while inhibitory messages tell the cell to stop firing. Some neurotransmitters can actually be both, depending on where they act in the body. This is the case for our friend acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is excitatory when it tells your muscles to contract, but it's inhibitory when it tells your heart to stop beating so fast. Humans have many kinds of neurotransmitters, and together they help control your moods, sleep cycles, and memory. Now that you know how neurons communicate, let's talk about the different types of neurons. There are 3 types of neurons, and they are the sensory, motor, and interneurons. Sensory neurons connect to receptors all over your body and take in sensory information from your environment. They are afferent, which just means they send information towards the brain and spinal cord. Your brain can then process this sensory information to let you hear, taste, touch, smell, and see, but you can learn more about that in our senses video. Next, we have motor neurons. Motor neurons control your muscles and are responsible for all your behaviors, including speech. They are efferent, which means they carry information away from your brain and spinal cord. And finally, we have interneurons, the most numerous type of neuron in the human brain. You can find them sitting between sensory and motor neurons. They help control reflexes or responses you don't have to think about. Interneurons are also called relay neurons because they pass on information between sensory and motor neurons. It's like an electrochemical relay race, with afferent giving the baton to interneuron, who runs to give the baton to efferent.
Now that you've learned a lot about the neuron, let's review some key parts of this lesson. What 2 parts make up the central nervous system? The brain and spinal cord, yes. Does your brain have more neurons or glial cells? Correct, the brain has 10 times more glial cells than neurons. Can you name the part of the neuron that picks up signals from nearby neurons? Dendrites is the correct answer. What do we mean when we say an action potential is all or nothing? It has to be strong enough to send down the axon.
What's the name of the tiny sac that holds neurotransmitters inside? It is called a vesicle. Can you name the two main types of neurotransmitters? Yes, they are excitatory and inhibitory. How many types of neurons do we have? There are 3, and they are sensory, motor, and interneurons. Which neuron sends signals away from your brain and spinal cord, sensory or motor? Motor is correct. Well, it looks like you've done a great job yet again. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you at our next lesson.